Amazing. So, welcome to the next in the webinars. These are the Presca Lunchtime sessions. I am Rob Webben. I am the CEO of Presca Sportswear, the world's first climate positive sportswear company. And you are giving up 15 minutes of your very precious time to learn from, hear from, be inspired by some incredible people in our network. So, without further ado, I'm very pleased to introduce good friend of mine. I would say I can call you a friend now, can't I, John? John
100%.
Twitchen. So John and I. Well, I'm not going to do the spiel. John, tell us about yourself and all the cool stuff you do.
Thanks, Rob. It's great to be here. We've known each other. I lose count, but it's over 5 years. It's probably longer than that now.
Yeah, it's about 8.
And yeah, sharing the pain over the years as well as the gains that we're now making in terms of achievements and so on. My background's environmental science degree from 25 plus years ago. Yes, quite old. And I've worked in resources, materials from I suppose, a very technical communications perspective for the last quarter of a century plus now. I guess I was lucky to go to university when I did, not least the grant maintenance support, but particularly at the sort of early stages, for many probably late, but early stages of the whole kind of climate emergency kind of emerging, if you like, and really understanding what the data was starting to tell us and show us. Now, of course, it's more visible than perhaps it was before. But yeah, I think we've both seen a lot over the last quarter of a century, and sort of fortunate in some ways and maybe unfortunate others, but the opportunity to do something about it, which is kind of what motivates me. And then in my spare time, I coach BMX and used to race BMX, and that's kind of how we met. Actually, was over a discussion about shirts, and now I'm in a whole load more trouble and strife thanks to you.
yeah, that was it. It was around bikes, wasn't it? And I think when I started the company, I was introduced to you because someone said, "Oh, you're making cycling kit. You need to meet John, who runs a BMX team." And we hit it off. I remember so many times I picked up the phone to you to say, "John, what do you think about this?" Like, you've always been a good sounding board, and I've always appreciated that. So well, let's talk bikes to start with, right? Why BMX? Like, obviously you've raced BMX, but now you manage teams. So what is it that you get out of that? Because that's a big commitment for you.
Yeah, it is. It's almost another job. You know that. I think riding bikes is awesome. I've done it since I was probably before I could walk. Actually, to be fair, like many people, you get on a scooter or a tricycle or something in the back garden. That was me ramming into the fence at the bottom of the garden. So BMX was a brand new thing, literally brand new in the UK, 79, 80 when I got my first bike. And my dad took me to a race and said, "Hey, do you fancy doing this?" Which, bearing in mind at the time, was basically burning down the side of a heath, which actually is now protected. It's like, sand lizards and newts and whatever. It's protected heath, literally is a protected heath, but they were burning down the side of it. And it looked like the most amazing thing. And there was no gate at the bottom to bang into, which is even better. I started doing that. And I suppose as an early adopter and quite a big kid, I did quite well. I persevered, though, through to the point where I didn't get into Loughborough, so I went to a different university. I got a car, girlfriend, and now wife, and went to the pub like all former athletes do. So that's kind of the potted history. I won the Brits along the way, and just think BMX is a great way into all forms of sport, let alone riding bikes. It's just fantastic. The people you meet, the skills that you develop for life, and of course enthusiasm for riding a bike, which is also quite useful from a sort of ecological perspective as well, being relatively low emissions depending on what you've eaten.
Yeah, too right. I never got into BMX. It just wasn't around me when I grew up, but I wish I had, actually. And I having got into it now through you, I'm not into the BMX, but into the BMX world, and met the amazing community, come to loads of races. I love it, actually. And genuinely, anyone watching this who hasn't been to a BMX race, you need to go, because it's wild. It's so fun, so accessible. But yeah, it really is a great sport. And for me, obviously, coming at the other end of it, I got into bikes. The same thing. I was kind of first put on a trike we used to have a really steep driveway at home, which went out onto not a busy road, but there's a country road, and no gate at the bottom. I would just go down that on my trike. I think, oh geez, my mum must have had heart attacks. And then I got into cycling, just going off with my mates during the day, and yeah, two wheels the way forward.
All the freedom in the world, all the freedom in the world.
Exactly. Okay, cool. So that kind of brings us on to the point where we met. We started talking about jerseys, and we were making jerseys, and still are making jerseys for you from recycled fibers. But I think the big thing for us has been this end game, hasn't it? Around, well, we're still part of this linear economy. We're still making things from recycled from plastics, essentially, albeit a lot better than the standard. But what happens at the end of the life? So tell me about what you're doing now, because that's what is also super exciting for me.
Yeah, well, we talked about obviously the recycled content in your product and the recycling process, and we talked several times about, okay, well, what do we do at the end of its life? Because it's less bad when you make it that way. It's better, but the same environmental fate. So it's either in a hole or up a chimney. And I think that was a really important aspect. And I know you've spent a huge amount of time on this as well. But I thought in my I don't know, naive way, it can't be that hard. It can't be that hard. And as I think you've probably heard me say before, and anyway, turns out it's quite hard. But as well as naive, I'm determined, and those two things maybe conflict each other, but they also complement. So I set out to fix the problem, and it was partly driven by sportswear and our conversations, but also thinking, well, what else is made of polyester? And lots of clothes are, lots of textiles are, but particularly for me and for Miles, my business partner in this venture, we've been wearing a lot of PPE, safety wear, high vis stuff, vests and jackets and trousers and whatever, because of working in materials and heavy materials and industry. And there's a lot of those as well. You might see them, in the hard shoulder of a motorway, having flown off the back of a ladder, or in a very hard wear environment where you're fixing roads or collecting bins, whatever it might be, digging rock out the ground. The actual turnover is quite high, but they perform an absolutely, as a lot of sportswear does, and outdoor wear, an absolutely fundamental role in keeping people safe, dry, warm, performing, and so on. So, it's one of those things. Polyester as a material is really valuable because it's so dynamic. It's so good at what it does. And you can mix it with other fibers to get other outcomes, whether it's breathability or waterproofing or whatever. But of course, at the end of life, they have an end of life, and it's really important that we do something about that. So, as I say, it turns out it's quite difficult. It's composite material. It's got visibility strips on it. It's got collars and elastic and whatever.
Lots of fluorescent dyes in there.
A lot of colours, and that's a really interesting area because probably some people will know, but lots won't. There's a lot of metals used in the dyes and pigments to give it either the colour or the staying power or the stickiness or the whatever it might be. So across clothing, not just in high vis or safety wear. So that's one of the big challenges, because they're at that sort of compound level. They're embedded in the product, literally they're in the product. They're actually quite hard to get out. But I wouldn't say that's been our biggest challenge. The biggest challenge actually has been sticking together bits of a supply chain that exist but have never had to work together. So, when you do a circular economy wheel, most of it already exists. It's just that those chunks around the sort of back end and bottom aren't actually talking to each other. They've never been made to do it. They've never had to do it. So we're asking questions of people as we go along the way that they've never even thought of, about, like crystallinity and things like that of end product, which is all probably very technical and quite boring and very chemical. Nevertheless, we got there. So, no small sort of thanks to you as well, because I think sticking these bits of the supply chain together is probably the most important thing that we've done, along with kind of come out of that inventing a process to depolymerize polyester and produce high quality materials. But sticking things together that haven't worked together before has been the biggest part.
Amazing. And so just to rewind, I don't think we've actually mentioned it. So this is chemical recycling.
Yeah, yeah,
So essentially we're taking the polyester fibers or whatever polyester's in, it could be, your plastic bottle or your duvet or, whatever that is, and break it down to the building blocks, your
that's right. Yeah.
ester groups. Is that right? I think.
Well, monomers
Monos.
to simplify things. So polyester is a polymer, which is a poly material. It's got lots of things in it joined together to give it the performance, the structure, the characteristics that we all know and wear and sometimes love as well. So whether that forms itself as a bottle or a jacket or something else, or a duvet or a set of curtains or something, so it doesn't matter really. It's the stuff that's in it that gives it those properties, that gives us the ability to use it in those ways. And it's very recyclable material mechanically, if it's in the right shape without too many other things in it. So bottles mechanically recycled into bottles or even into your sportswear. But there are limitations to that, a bit like other fibers, like wood, paper fibers. They get shorter. There is an end to that process. There's a recovery needed of that. And what effectively we're able to do is either for stuff that's too difficult to mechanically recycle, or stuff that is sort of falling out of that system that needs to be put back again into the system as new building blocks, we take it apart. So we have I dropped off?
Hello? No, you're still here. It's all good.
I'm still here. Very good. It all went quiet for a minute. So we depolymerize the polymer. What that means is polyester is PET, so that's polyethylene terephthalate. So we depolymerize it, remove the P. We end up with ethylene glycol and terephthalic acid, and those are exactly the same things that are used to manufacture by the chemical industry and the supply chain to manufacture new polyester that goes back into garments or even into packaging. Okay, so that it's very simple in that way. Obviously, there's a lot of complex, swapping of C's and O's and H's and whatever else going around in the process, and purifying it to a level that it can be used again is really, really important, because our motivation all along has been to work with existing. So, where a wheel on a bike or otherwise doesn't need reinventing, why on earth would you spend time and money on that? And why wouldn't you work with something which has been, perfected, for want of a better word, over the last 50 or 100 or even longer years? It's been finely tuned, so it works really well, very efficiently in the context of what it's doing. What we're trying to do is say, hey, there's some secondhand stuff which is literally as good as new that you can use again.
Yeah, that's amazing. And I mean, we could spend hours talking about this. For me, this is fascinating stuff. But I suppose at a higher level, and given we're very short on time, so where's next then? You've got to the point where you've proven the concept. Where next for Stuff4Life, your company, and how can people find out more?
I think two things: scale, so making it bigger, which is exactly where we're at now. So we've already scaled up, I think 700 plus times, and then another 700 times. So the next scale is full commercial, which is where we are now. It takes a few pounds, but we're nearly there. And the other thing is other difficult materials. So we're looking at other composite materials, polymer-based materials that have a similar challenge, but don't have any kind of governance or regulation around them, or the drivers don't currently target those materials. They're not heavy enough, or they're not in the right sectors. So, but they're equally important, because obviously, plastic in the wrong place is a problem, but plastic going round is not a problem, right? In my humble opinion. And then in terms of finding out, is Stuff4.life web. Have a little look. There's a short video that we made of where we've got to the process, working with our friends at Arco safety professionals. So we've come a long way, but we're only just starting. We've got a long way to go, and of course working with you guys as well. We're really looking forward to that in the future. Yeah,
brilliant. I know when we were at the Nationals just a couple of weekends ago, we've got a bunch of jerseys there. Most of them we'll try to redistribute, but the ones that can't, then we'll get into your system. We'll put them to use to make something brand new.
Yeah.
Super exciting, John. That's amazing. Thank you. And I know this time has flown past, but I will ask three standard questions if that's okay. So, what is it? What does community mean to you, John?
Community is people, it's humanity, but it's there's a sense of community. So whatever your community is, you know, and hopefully everyone's part of something. But for me, it's riding bikes and, you know, trying to make good things happen. Those are my communities, I suppose. And it's great when they overlap. People like, you know, you and me, a really good example of that. They're probably the strongest, because there's like, you know, if it's chemistry, there's like two bonds, isn't there? There's two reasons to be doing stuff and sharing information and, you know, achieving things. It's great. So that's what it means to me. It's quite
Amazing.
a long answer. So.
And why is the climate important?
Well, because we kind of need it, and it, you know, it's sort of okay. You know, you might think, well, this bit warming up's quite pleasant. I mean, it's a bit too hot this year, wasn't it? But the the implications for even small changes in an ecosystem, and if you look at it, you know, Gaia theory, you look at it as the entire planet as an ecosystem. But even you imagine changing one parameter in a pond, you can kill off, or you can encourage growth, you know, overgrowth of something like that. So we're playing with a trillion different parameters, and each one of them is like tweaking a small thing in a pond. So the changes can be really, really significant. Not all bad, but really significant. And we just, you know, need to be more careful about that, I think.
Yeah, we do.
Yeah.
We absolutely do. And given that as you know, that's a scary prospect when you get stuck into it too much. What keeps you positive? Because I know you're very driven and very motivated. What is it that keeps you going, gets you out of bed to keep pushing on each day?
Well, I think it's, you know, it's having a plan. In my case, strategy. I'm not a particular detail person, as you probably know, but having a plan, having something to really concentrate on and focus on. And if in doubt, jump on your bike and go and get some outdoors, you know, fresh air and a nice view. There's nothing better to reset, in my case, my brain and my mind, than probably riding up a hill, and then more importantly, riding back down it.
Yeah, absolutely. Which brings me actually to John, to the point you promised me at some point a lesson around Stockwood Jump Park, right? Or jump trail.
Yeah.
Still holding out for that, although probably better book a few weeks off after work just in case. John, that was a pleasure. Before we go, you got to show us your t-shirt.
Yeah, I did. Choose BMX. It was from the Brits. These are the volunteers t-shirts. It's kind of Wham-esque, if you like. So Bournemouth BMX that hosted the Brits, celebrating their 40th anniversary this year. You guys were there. Thanks for coming.
Yeah, choose life, choose BMX. Brilliant.
Choose
John,
BMX.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you for your time. I've loved just catching up. It's always great. Really good to hear about your progress with Stuff4Life. Everyone, I encourage everyone to look into that. You know, that's a real a big step forward in terms of circularity in clothing, and we're excited about where that can go for Preska and Stuff4Life working together. So, John, thank you. I hope you enjoy the rest of your day. I hope you enjoy your weekend, and speak to you very soon.
Thanks, you too.